everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. What you're looking at here is a wildfire on Tenerife, which is the largest island of the Canary Islands that belongs to Spain. And this video is actually primarily going to focus on a few more church-specific signs that have occurred that I had not put on my spreadsheet until just now. So I'm going to go over those, but at the very beginning of this video, I want to cover just an interesting thing that I realized just now as I was preparing this video that have to do with these wildfires and these evacuations. Okay, so this one seems to be growing rapidly. Don't know, what the outcome is going to be, but here's one video, here's another video, and then just so you can see it on the map, this is where Tenerife, the island of Tenerife, is part of the Canary Islands, and this is a part of Spain up here. Okay, so it's just off the coast of Morocco. So before we get into this, this is what I have for the Flood the Earth Challenge. 6,257 copies of the Book of Mormon shared so far. Remember, the channel goal is to get to at least 10. And then when you report it, make sure to include #flood so I can quickly and easily find your comment or your email. Ideally, put this in the subject line of the email if you send an email. Okay, so, oh, and by the way, and before we get into these wildfires, I guess there's this crazy flooding going on right now in Frankfurt, Germany. Here you see a metro or a subway that's flooding. Also, I think I had another video. Oh yeah, then you have this airport that's just completely flooded. So there's stuff going on, protests still going on in Israel over the judicial overhaul. This is from France. You have a bunch of flash flooding going on there. Okay, so what I wanted to say was this. Okay, so you have wildfires in Tenerife, which has forced thousands to evacuate or stay indoors. Now, I did my video about Yellowknife, Canada. It's the capital city of the Northwest Territories. And the entire city, the entire capital city of Northwest Territories was evacuated. That's the very last video that I just made. I don't necessarily post these videos in order. I'm not even sure when this one's going to come out, but it's going to come out after that video that I did about Yellowknife, Canada. So there you had a city where the entire city was evacuated. And right now, as we speak, you have fires going on in Tenerife and evacuations going on. According to this Guardian article, it says more than 7,500 people have been evacuated or ordered to stay indoors as the worst wildfire in at least 4 decades ravages the Canary Island of Tenerife, burning through 2,600 hectares or 6,425 acres of land and drawing closer to the capital, Santa Cruz. So gonna have to keep my eye on this because I'm keeping track of capital cities, but a crazy fire on Tenerife already causing evacuations, drawing closer to Santa Cruz. In fact, let's look at here's I'm assuming that this is like maybe the center point of where the fire is on Google Maps. But anyway, if this is the location, you can see that Santa Cruz is just right up here to the northeast. Well, no, I'll do that some other time. Okay, so you have Canada, evacuations, Spain, evacuations. In that same video where I was talking about Yellowknife, Canada, we talked about Greece, okay, how they performed their largest ever evacuation. This was in Rhodes, the island of Rhodes. And according to this article from Smithsonian Magazine, 30,000 people evacuated. All right. Here's the Yellowknife one. Okay. Associated Press. Okay, evacuations ordered after winds whipped Northern California wildfire near site of 2022 deadly blaze. So, evacuations in California. This article came out on the 16th. I'm making this video on the 17th, so this was just yesterday. Evacuations in California. Here we are in Oregon. This was also published yesterday. Lane County residents ordered to evacuate as wildfires advance. Okay, and then we have, let's see, this is, where is this? This is Washington State. Highway fire. Evacuation orders, warnings for Nevada County wildfire remain in place. So you have evacuations going on here. And then we got this. House fire in La Center prompts level 3, or go now, evacuation orders. And this is also in Washington State. And I don't know that I got them all, but this one is also from the 16th. So right now, as I'm making this video, a lot of people are evacuating. And then, of course, that includes Lahaina, because Lahaina's mostly been destroyed, but you have all these people that have evacuated, that fled for their lives. These fires, I don't know. I have to start to wonder if maybe this is like the beginnings of the fire that's going to cleanse the world at the time of the second coming. I mean, I don't know. From everything that I've studied so far, looking at all these different quotes, trying to get to the bottom of it, it seems like it's going to mostly happen in a single day, but maybe not. I'm not so sure that it's been said explicitly. Sometimes the scriptures, they'll say something, but you don't have all the details. And President Nelson has said before, I have a quote, I'm not going to read it right now, but he basically said that the scriptures don't have all the answers to every single prophecy, how things are going to happen. It doesn't reveal everything. It just reveals everything that we need to know for salvation. And it also reveals other information, but it doesn't have everything in there in the scriptures. So, I just, and this video is probably going to be published on Monday. And so by that time, I guess we'll find out what happens to Yellowknife, but there's the possibility that it's destroyed by now, by the time I publish this. I don't know. This is just really crazy. Cities that are being burnt by fire. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Okay, yeah, so let's start looking at these signs that seem to be specifically for the church. And we'll do it in chronological order. So the first new one that I have comes from May 31st, 1971. The Independence, Missouri Visitor Center was dedicated. So it took me forever to find this. I don't know why. When I searched for it on the church website, it didn't pull up. I know it doesn't have the best, search engine or whatever you want to call it on the church website, but I thought it would have picked this up as I was searching for it. But whatever, this is in the August 1971 ensign. Okay. The First Prophet of the Last Dispensation by President Joseph Fielding Smith, President of the Church. The following address by President Joseph Fielding Smith was delivered at the dedication of a new visitor center at Independence, Missouri on the 31st of May, 1971. Services were held outside, accompanied by much thunder and lightning. Now, you know what? Before I get into this, what's so special about this center? In case you're brand new, there's always people joining the channel. I don't expect that everybody would know this. Well, you might remember, or you may have heard that if everything had gone through, if the saints had been found worthy to build the actual city of New Jerusalem, it would have looked like this. Well, actually, this was the first version, but then there was a revision. And I'll show you the revision in just a minute. You scroll in, and at the center of the city, you'll notice these 24 structures. These are 24 temples. there was going to be a 24 temple complex. Okay? A lot of times people will talk about how there's going to be the great temple in the center of New Jerusalem once it's, built. And there's actually going to be more than just one. I'm thinking that sometimes church leaders may just say, great temple, singular, just to not complicate things. But the fact remains that the plan was, and I believe, and I'll show you why, I believe it still is to create a 24 temple complex. So here was the original plan. You see all the notes all around it. I've actually done a video going through all this. Here's the revised plan, which still has the 24 temples in the middle, but it expanded the size of the city. And the city was supposed to house 15 to 20,000 residents. And this was going to be essentially a template for other cities. And each city would be a stake. Okay? So that's a city. And when you think about it that way, and when we think about independence today, let's do LDS Meeting House Locator. When we think about Independence, Missouri today, just right up here. Where is it? Right there. We have a stake center right here. Okay? This is a stake center. This is essentially a city. Like all the people that are in this stake, that would make up a city if Zion existed today, like the city of New Jerusalem. And right next to it, you have the Independence Visitor Center. Okay, let's look at let's go to Google Maps. Let's see, LDS Independence Visitor Center. Enter map, satellite. So it's in the area of the other two breakoffs from the church, the splinter groups, the Community of Christ, formerly known as the RLDS. They have this temple, and then their version of the conference center right here, the auditorium. And then you have the Church of Christ temple lot that is on the site of what would have been the first temple. In fact, this temple right here, number 11. This is the land that is currently owned by the Church of Christ temple lot, but they don't have all the rest of this. They don't. Okay. And by the way, this is significant. I did another video a while ago. You may or may not have watched it. It got 4.8 thousand views, so that's kind of like a average video, or average. Called Names of the New Jerusalem Temples in the 24 Temple Complex. And you can find this in the Joseph Smith papers. So if you want to watch the video, for more details, I'll put the link for the video in the description below. But I put together a spreadsheet so that I could just easily find it just on my spreadsheets. So this is a representation of the temples and their names. And from what I researched, they don't have like individual names for each one, but it's done in groups of 3. So for example, so this 3 that would have had the primary temple, or like the headquarters temple, number 11, would have been called House of the Lord for the Presidency of the High and Most Holy Priesthood after the order of Melchizedek, which was after the order of the Son of God upon Mount Zion, city of the New Jerusalem. And then after that, it seems like the ones next in status or authority would be behind it as you go west. So you have the next 3, which are the Sacred Apostolic Repository for the use of the bishop. And then after that, the Holy Evangelical House for the High Priesthood of the Holy Order of God. And then after that, the House of the Lord for the Elders of Zion, an ensign to the nations. So it's like it goes First Presidency, Apostles, Evangelists, which I guess maybe this would correspond to Patriarchs. I don't know if like this would also correspond to like the 70s, like Patriarchs in 70s. I don't know. high priests as well. And then this one, these three at the end on the westernmost part would be elders. And then in front of those 12, you have another 12, numbers 15 through 22. So the first one is House of the Lord for the presidency of the high priesthood after the order of Aaron, a standard for the people. And then the next set, House of the Lord for the high priesthood after the order of Aaron, the law of the kingdom of heaven, messenger to the people. And then after that, um, House of House of the House of the Lord for the teachers in Zion, messenger to the church. And the last one, House of the Lord for the deacons in Zion, helps in government. Okay. So you basically, more or less, you have the different offices of the priesthood that are represented here. And we've talked about in past videos. You can find all this on my playlist called Independence Visitor Center, or I have another one called New Jerusalem, where we talk about how all these would have different functions and wouldn't necessarily be like the temples that we think of right now, where you go and perform the ordinances of salvation, like baptisms for the dead, initiatories, endowments, sealings. So some would be like administrative buildings. I tend to think that the main temple probably would have been the equivalent of what the Salt Lake Temple is now, or maybe the administration building where the apostles have their offices. But I don't know. I don't know that for sure. And then the last thing before I go into the sign or the miracle, I want to go to the Interpreter Foundation website. Me and Troy recently interviewed the president of the Interpreter Foundation, Daniel C. Peterson. So you can go back maybe like a week or so and find that interview that we did. But look what they have here in for this article. Okay, this is talking about the visitor center now. Okay, the property purchased by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in 1904 remained undeveloped until 1968. After two different attempts over the years by the City of Independence/Board of Education to purchase the property from the church, and concerned about the reality of eminent domain by the City of Independence. If you don't know what eminent domain is, that's where the government can take your land forcibly. Like if they're going to build a road, or they deem that something needs to go there, they can just take it from you. Which is kind of messed up in some cases. But so they were concerned about the city doing that. So the church made an announcement in December 1967 for the present Visitors Center. Plans were quickly developed and formally approved in April 1968. A groundbreaking ceremony was held the following August. Interestingly, in the development, now this is the key right here. In the development of those plans, in early 1967 by church architect Emil Fetzer, and with input directly from Alvin R. Dyer. And by the way, he's that very, very special apostle that first he became an apostle, but he wasn't in the quorum of the 12. And then he joined the first presidency because he essentially had a special mission that had to do with Missouri. I've done videos about him. So again, just go look at those two playlists, New Jerusalem or my New Jerusalem playlist or Independence Visitor Center. You'll find the video. So he was special, and it seems that his mission was potentially this. The Lord probably, because he was basically an expert on, or kind of like a historian of the church lands in Missouri. Okay. So it wasn't just anybody. He had a special purpose. Okay, so Emil Fetzer and Alvin R. Dyer went for input and approval by President David O. McKay. The awareness of the Joseph Smith-inspired, expanded 24-temple complex, prepared in early 1933, so it's this one right here, this expanded version that we've been talking about. Aware of this, okay, aware of that, that was definitely taken into consideration. On March 10th, 1967, a meeting of Dyer and Fetzer was held with McKay in his Hotel Utah apartment office. Dyer recorded the highlights of this session in his diary. Okay, so here it is. We reported to the president that our study in this direction was to undertake, if we could, to ascertain which of the temple buildings designated would presumably be located on that part of the temple land and that the church owned. This we have arrived at and would be concentrated upon for the erection of a building for the purpose intended, the basic structure of which could be used at a future date as part of the temple complex. So they built one of these temples. Probably 13 or 16. Who knows? Let's look at it. Because if the main temple went right here, you see that? You would just go southeast a little bit. Just like that. So main temple number 11, and then this would be temple, I don't know, temple number 13, temple number 16, probably one of these two. This is what we're looking at. It's not just a visitor center. It is a future temple of New Jerusalem, currently being used as a visitor center. Okay, so let's see. And then later, still in Alvin R. Dyer's diary, the proposed structure would be 2 stories high with a floor dimension of 61 feet by 87 feet, which dimension is the same as revealed to the prophet Joseph as the size of the temple complex, or as the size of the complex buildings. And by the way, that revelation or those inspired dimensions are found here in the Joseph Smith papers, and I did a video where we went over that. You can find it here. So just again, see my playlist called Independence Visitor Center, and you'll find that video where we go over those dimensions. Okay, so I have to say all this so that you understand why this is significant. Okay, so they built the visitor center. It was dedicated on the 31st of May, 1971. So look at this. So for this future temple, and dedicating it to be a visitor center, but for this future temple, very significant temple, services were held outside, accompanied by much thunder and lightning, but only a drop or two of rain. As soon as the services were completed, as soon as it was completed, a drenching rain began falling. The independence is of great historical significance to the church, since the area was designated by revelation to Joseph Smith as the city of Zion. Land for a temple was dedicated in 1831. The new visitor center is on a portion of that land. President N. Eldon Tanner of the First Presidency gave the dedicatory address and prayer. Okay, now look at this part right here. Okay, if there's any doubt about whether Salt Lake City is supposed to be where, that things have changed, now it's going to be Salt Lake City, that because we have a Temple Square, we have buildings, various buildings on Temple Square, so this is now going to be the new complex. Look what it says here. I might as well read this first paragraph. I am very grateful to have the privilege of participating in the dedication of this visitor center and of raising my voice in testimony and thanksgiving relative to some great and eternal truths that are directly associated with this undertaking. We are assembled at a historic place, one that is hallowed by the memories of what has transpired here, and one that is sacred to Latter-day Saints because of what is yet to come. That's an allusion to this becoming the New Jerusalem. Because of the part that Jackson County, Missouri has played and will yet play in this dispensation, I desire to call attention to two great truths. First, that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and second, that Joseph Smith is a prophet. Okay? So, but the fact of the matter is that it seems that by miraculous means, what seems like what would have been a thunderstorm with rain was held back or delayed until the dedication was over. You understand? So this is significant. It's significant. And there's somebody in my ward, by the way, that was there when this happened, and he was talking about this in Elders Quorum, how he personally witnessed this, and it was really neat to hear him relay that story. Okay, so this is the first new item that I have on my church-specific signs and miracles. The next one, and I've already done a video or two about this, there was the flooding in downtown Salt Lake City in 1983. So let's go here, ksl.com, looking back at the 1983 flood that sent a river through downtown. In this image, you can see the state capitol in the background. The temple would be more like over here. Let's just read a little bit about this. Let's just read the highlights. This is still from that previous video that I did about this. Flooding isn't unusual in Utah. In fact, southern Utah felt the effects of it again this past August. However, for Salt Lake and much of Utah, the most memorable flood not only shut down some streets for days, it turned them into rivers. Some streets, such as State Street, were just that, aqueducts to control the problems caused by the rising water. Makeshift vehicle and pedestrian bridges were constructed to allow people to commute to work or wherever they needed to go with as minimal impact as possible. So there's one of those bridges to go over this river, essentially, right? Temple Square is just like right over here. So how did the state flood this badly? Unlike floods caused by immediate heavy downpours, the 1983 flood was the result of abnormally high precipitation totals for several months and culminated into weeks of issues. The 1981 and 1982 precipitation totals were off the charts, according to the Utah Department of History. For example, the September 1982 rain total was about 10 times higher than the average, recording a record total of 4.35 inches of rain that month. A Deseret News front page article from May 29th, 1983 wasn't like the traditional above the fold story. It was bullet points with many reports of where flooding was the worst. More than a dozen bullet points ranged from throughout Salt Lake to places like Bountiful, Centerville, Levin, or however you pronounce that. I know people Levin, I don't know, and Pleasant Grove. Okay, here you have some pictures, right? Flooding, destruction. Rising water from City Creek created flooding that threatened buildings and landmarks all around Temple Square. Okay, so Temple Square and the temple were potentially in the path of this. One way to combat the problems in Salt Lake City were to turn some streets into rivers to divert the water. State Street was one. That's like that's basically like the main street in the Salt Lake Valley. One of the main streets. That's not a highway or like a freeway. Another was 1300 South from 6th West to the Jordan River. All right, people doing sandbags and being successful at that. And then there you have the temple in the background. Look how close it got to the temple. Now, I've searched high and low. It does not seem like the temple or any buildings on Temple Square were affected by this, from what I can tell. If you know otherwise, put it in the comments or send me an email, especially if you have a source. But it doesn't seem like any church property was destroyed or damaged. And I think that there's, there's a lesson there. It's just like Lahaina. You have this disaster going on, but church properties make it out. It's really interesting. It's dramatic. So you had this happen, and I can't remember at this point, but I did another video focusing on the fact that this was at the time that shoot, I think there was just the one vacancy in the Quorum of the 12, but Spencer W. Kimball was ill at the time, so ill that he couldn't call another apostle. Here, let's look at my timeline right here, just so I can verify. Yeah, Spencer W. Kimball, here we go, 83. So he was the president at the time. So he was ill. He couldn't call anybody. And so all of 1983, if I remember right, went with that vacancy. And then at the beginning of 1984, another apostle passed away. So there were two vacancies, and people were worried about what was going to happen because there had been like a couple general conferences that went by with one or two vacancies. I can't remember how it all played out, but guess who the apostles were that ended up filling those vacancies? It was President Nelson and President Oaks. And Spencer W. Kimball specifically said to call them in that order. And had he not said that, President Oaks could potentially be the prophet right now. But the Lord tells his prophets, the agenda. And so obviously that's how it was supposed to be. And I've wondered if somehow this flooding event taking place at this time, when President Nelson's vacancy was open, you have this flooding that takes place. It's odd. It's just another one of these odd things. And then not only that, but if I remember right, it was January that the first apostle passed away. And then on the very same day, a year later, that's when the second apostle passed away, leaving the second vacancy. I'm sorry I don't have all the details right now because it's not really the focus of this video, but you can search that up. You can search it on my channel. Okay, so we got that. Let's go back to here. Okay, so the flooding in downtown Salt Lake. As far as I know, church property unaffected. And I guess I should probably add what I just said, how President Nelson's spot was open during this time, which I feel like there's something to that. Okay, the next one, there's the 1999 downtown Salt Lake tornado, the Provo Tabernacle fire, where the Second Coming painting was burnt, all except for Christ coming at the Second Coming. We got the 2017 eclipse that went over Independence, Far West, and Adamandayaman. Also the Revelation 12 sign that happened during women's session of General Conference. The earthquake that caused the angel Moroni to drop his trumpet on the 18th of March, 2020. The North Salt Lake tornado 2 days after Elder Dean Davies passes away, who was from North Salt Lake. Weird. The Tonga volcano. There was that one church building that was left standing from the tsunami. It was all other structures on Atata were destroyed except for the church. The meteor over Salt Lake on the mirror date of the when Angel Moroni dropped his trumpet. Okay, President Nelson becoming the oldest prophet or apostle immediately the day after Queen Elizabeth II passed away. Weird. Longest reigning British monarch. Okay. Now the other new one. So we already did those two. Let me just double check. So we have those two that we just talked about, and here's the new one. Okay, it was the Nauvoo derecho. A derecho is basically an inland hurricane. It's I can't remember what the definition is, but it's like you have to have straight line winds for like 2 or 400 miles, something like that. And I think they have to be hurricane force, essentially. That's just like a rough definition of what a derecho is. And by the way, this same derecho hit the capital of Illinois. Nauvoo is in Illinois, and the derecho affected Springfield, Illinois, which is the capital. But we're focusing on church specific signs, and there's a new bit of information that I didn't know about this event. There was a miracle that took place. So let's go ahead and where do we need to go? Right here. Okay, first NPR. Winds reached up to 100 miles per hour in derecho. Power outages continue. Again, let's look at the Saffir. What is it? Saffir Simpson scale. That's for hurricanes. I already forgot, and I just looked this up in a recent video. So to be a category 1, it has to be 74 miles per hour. Okay? So this would have been the equivalent of a category 2 tornado because that's between 96 to 110 mile per hour winds. Okay? So category 2 equivalent happened in Nauvoo. Okay, let's see. The Weather Service reported extensive tree and utility pole damage and some damage to structures, including a communications tower and grain bins. Some of the hardest hit towns were Wauconda, Cahokia, and Wayland in Missouri, Keokuk and Montrose in Iowa, and Nauvoo, Ferris, Carthage, and Macomb in Illinois, according to the Weather Service. A brief tornado was also spotted in West Gorn, Missouri, around 45 miles southwest of Keokuk. And I apologize if I pronounced any of those wrong. On the church website, no, this is the Deseret News, church news portion of their website. Missionaries gather hundreds of visitors into basements in Nauvoo historic sites during intense windstorm. So here they are, all happy and smiling and glad that they're safe. Nauvoo was hit by a derecho, which is an intense, long-lasting windstorm that can generate hurricane-level wind speeds. The storm uprooted several trees, some of which damaged cars, but no damage was sustained by the historic buildings. So here's another time that church properties were not affected. So we have Lahaina, we have the 1983 flood. Let me remind myself. The tornado, the downtown Salt Lake tornado, although I think there was some damage, but it was very, very minimal. I'd have to go back and research that again. Okay, but anyway. There's a downed tree. Okay, so that's great. None of the buildings were damaged. Okay, all the missionaries and everybody was okay. That guy looks like he almost has a beard. I'm sure he doesn't. It just looks like it right here. Just a little bit of brown right here, but that's probably just the low quality of the picture that was taken. Okay, I hope that wasn't a beard, Elder. Okay, now this is the miracle that I didn't know about. This is from WGEM. Nauvoo woman shares survival story following Thursday's derecho. Now look at this. It wasn't just the woman. It was it had to do with the Pioneer Trek activity that was going on. Okay, so but Pence is not focusing on what was lost. She said she and a group of youth are lucky to be alive after surviving 120 mile per hour winds. Oh, so where she was 120 miles per hour, which takes it up in, oh my gosh, that takes it up to category 4. That's the equivalent to category 4 hurricane winds. Oh my gosh. Okay. Quote, there were about 20 youth from Missouri that were making a pioneer trek, and they were going to trek out from the city to my farm. And they were coming with these hand carts, and they were going to come here and enjoy a little gathering. End quote. But a sudden alert on Pence's phone revealed severe weather headed toward the youth's path. Quote, my husband and I knew they were close to being there, so we jumped in our vehicles, and he picked up a big load of kids in the back of his trailer. Pence said her husband found his way to their house and took that group into their cellar just in the nick of time. Just in the nick of time. Quote, as soon as he got those kids in the house, I mean as soon, that tree fell on his truck, Pence said. Holy cow. Holy cow. That is crazy. You can't tell me that these aren't signs. It doesn't matter if you can explain them. It doesn't matter if there's been previous derechos. It does not matter. What matters is the message that is conveyed to people that are observing. It's about observers and relaying a message. It doesn't have to be supernatural. You just have to feel the presence of God. And he works through science, by the way. So I always get confused by these people that are like, well, this happened because blah, blah, blah. Well, there's an explanation in science for that. God created science, and that's how he operates. There's this horrible misconception that the laws of science have to be suspended in order for it to be a miracle. It's so silly. Okay, continuing though. All right. Meanwhile, Pence drove around searching for anyone else who might need help. Quote, some of the leaders were still on the road because they were watching for people. And when they saw everybody was gone, they jumped in my van. But by then, we were in the worst of it. End quote. Which led them to a difficult decision. Should they stay in the van or get out and find shelter? Intuition, well, was it intuition? Intuition led them to their answer. Or maybe they said prayers. Quote, we all felt we shouldn't open the doors. We shouldn't get out of the van. For some reason, we just felt like we shouldn't get out. End quote. She said they sat there for the next 20 minutes in the building, in the blinding rain, watching trees uproot. Quote, and wondering when we were gonna take flight and become one with the metal and glass. That would be so horrible. Let me tell you something. It was just when was it? Maybe like a month and a half ago or so. There was a pretty strong storm that came through my area. We were driving home from Walmart, and we knew that there was a storm, but we didn't know it was going to be that bad. And it was blinding rain, and the winds were really intense. And I was pretty scared. I was scared. There was no tornado watch going on, and therefore no tornado warning, but the winds were pretty strong, and I was very nervous. There was lightning, and I could only imagine being in this situation, which is so much worse, with such higher wind speeds than what I experienced. That must have been pretty frightening. Okay, now look at this. Pence credits a higher power to their survival. Quote, why did a semi-truck flip over and my van didn't? Pence asked. Nauvoo City officials agree that it was a miracle that no one was killed. Quote, there were a lot of people spared. We had no injuries that we know of, no deaths, so we've really been blessed in that respect, said Nauvoo Chamber of Commerce President Tom Grant. So, I don't know. Now, not trying to diminish the miracle, but it could be because of a semi has more surface area on which the wind can push, but still being in category 4 hurricane wind speeds, I'm sure that a van could have easily just tipped over. and I'm sure that there was a miracle going on there. So this was news to me. I didn't know about this story. So none of the church properties were damaged, and then you had these youth and their leaders that all made it through. Okay, and then also the missionaries right here. I've got to know, you guys, if you have any other events like this that have taken place, send them my way. Okay, what I'm looking for is like when there was some kind of thing happening in nature, or it could be war, or just something where it seems like a message was sent and a miracle occurred. Ideally, if you can find a source for that, that would be great. I have no doubt that there are just probably so many stories out there, but just looking at what I have right now, okay, just based on the things that I know off the top of my head, it seems like a lot have been taking place lately. Of course, that may just be because we're in closer proximity to these years than in the past, but if you know of any, please send me an email so I can add them. And I think this is a great way for us to all realize that the Lord does protect the righteous, and he protects his people. And you just have example after example of that, in that he is speaking to us if we're listening. And I think this is why it's important to write things down, whether it be dreams that you have. It's been a while since I've done a video about dreams, but I'm still doing my best to do that. I feel like a lot of information is coming through, things that are relevant just like to me and my family. And it's like you have to write it down so you can visualize it and also not forget things. Feel free yourself to come to my spreadsheet anytime that you want and just look through all these different tabs. It's good for you to do things on your own, but you can copy anything that I have here, copy it onto your own, your own documents and into your own study, maybe to give you a jump start if you haven't done this already, or just to add on to what you already have. But the link for my spreadsheets, listen very carefully. The link for my spreadsheets are in the description box of every video. You can still email me and I'll give you the link, but the link is literally in every single video in the description box. You click on that, it lets you come here, and you can't change anything on my spreadsheets, but you can copy and you can paste, or say that you're looking at the quotes over here. I have many quotes that are long and they get cut off. Okay. On my desktop, what I'm able to do is double click and then it shows the whole thing, but you're not able to do that. So you'll have to either copy and then paste it onto a different document, or you can drag the function bar, the function field, whatever. You can drag this down and it'll reveal the rest of the contents of that cell. I've thought about other ways of doing this, like, doing a website or, just different things. But I feel like this is the most efficient way to continue the work that I'm doing, is just doing it this way. So I don't know, just get used to copying and pasting. And it's probably best that you have your own documents for yourself. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.